IVM. Welcome to Absolutely Right, a show that celebrates and decodes minds of some amazing achievers. I'm your host Aditi Surana. I'm a graphologist and a high performance coach. Our guest today is Manju Sara Rajan, also known as MSR, who is a journalist, editor, and arts manager based in Kerala. She is presently the editor-in-chief of beautifulhomes.com, India's largest design and decor content platform presented by Asian Paints. Before moving to Kerala in 2015, Manju was the founding editor of Architectural Digest, which definitely has set new benchmarks for the coverage of design in India. She was the former CEO of the Kochi Biennale Foundation, where she oversaw the management of Kochi Muziris Biennale 2016. In today's episode, we will discuss why did Manju decide to move to Kerala at the peak of her thriving career? What does she do to be resilient in her way of working? And which stroke in her as well as your writing speaks about creativity, spontaneity, and inconsistency? We all have felt some game-changing aha moments that bring in tremendous clarity. But very few people have gathered courage to act on those moments. Manju's willingness to walk off the beaten path opened new doors for her. Let's hear her story from her perspective. She'll join us on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. Hi Manju, very excited to have you on the show, and I'm so curious to know about your work with art, with your professional work, and your journey as a parent. Welcome to Absolutely Right.
Thank you so much for having me, Aditi. It's so exciting to be here.
So Manju, please tell me, before we go and talk about your career, please tell me about your journey to Kerala and the decision to move from Bombay in the middle of, or rather at the peak of your career, and choosing to make this, really off-beaten choice. How did that come about? Where did that thought germinate from?
So I am from Kerala, but I didn't grow up here. I grew up like a lot of Keralites in the Middle East.
Okay.
But some years before my kids were born, we had decided that we would have a holiday home here. And so we had started constructing this house, and then my kids were born, and then what happened was I became an editor of Architectural Digest just about a few weeks actually, before I learned that I was also going to have twins.
Oh my God.
So it was pretty much like having three children at the same time within a 6-month period. And then around 2014, we started, bringing my kids to Kerala, to the house that we were building and spending time here. And all through the time that they were born and early days of the magazine, I think I had pretty much worked nonstop. And, as a lot of working mothers, the moment you step out of the house, you feel guilty. The moment you step back into the house, you feel guilty about something else. And so I spent all my time, sort of at night, awake with the kids, then getting up in the morning, going to work. And then there was a point in 2014, I distinctly remember when I saw my kids sort of running around in the grass in our house, and it was like sort of this aha moment, like, why don't I just move? And but it took me more than a year from that idea to actually get the guts to really resign. Because
you told me the story yesterday, and I'm still getting goosebumps as we are talking about it, because I can totally understand the gravity of the situation. Because for a mother who is professionally so invested, and then having kids, and I know so many women who do not have the courage to make such choices, though they have the aha moments.
Well, I mean, I think I would say that I was lucky enough to have a choice. And in some sense that the career that I loved my job. I was the editor of a very, important design magazine. It was a matter of great respect and completely identified with who I am and what I had spent at that point almost, I think, about almost 10 years working. But when I weighed up everything and I thought, well, the only thing stopping me from taking a jump is really fear.
Right.
The fear of what will happen, what will I do. I always consider an income very fundamental, even if it's a small income, very fundamental to my existence. And so I thought, well, then you have to sort of to prioritize. And at that time, I thought, well, if I miss this chance right now, then there's really very little potential of me being able to grasp that time back.
With your
Um,
kids.
with the kids, but also giving that experience to them at that age. So I thought that, well, if I can gather up the courage, and like I said, it took me a year, because the number one question in my mind, and I wrote about this as well, was that when somebody says, what do you do? What am I going to say? Am I going to say, and of course, I mean, being a stay-at-home mom and working with kids is an enormously tiring and really, really, really difficult job, but it is not one that I had ever seen myself doing. My mother worked throughout her career, so I thought, what am I going to say? Who are what do you do? Like, well, I used to be. Uh, I am the XXXXX of XXX things. So that took me a long time to gather up the courage, and I also was very lucky. I worked at Condé Nast, and Alex Gurvilla was the MD of Condé Nast, was also a dear friend of mine, and he was very very supportive. And so he said, okay, you go and you be the editor at large, and you see what happens, and if you like it, and can you are you okay? And so it 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 was a terribly hard decision, and I remember the early days of being here, I was just utterly lost, and I was making flower arrangements. Taking videos of my kids running around, and every time my son threw a tantrum, I'd be like, "Oh my God, what have I done? Why am I here? I have nowhere to go. My clothes are all redundant. I have no events to go to anymore."
Oh,
So it was really difficult. But like I said, there was, sometimes you have this idea, and it takes over your head as a great idea, and it doesn't often happen. But when you get it, I mean, even for myself, I don't think I've had that many times, but it got me, and it felt like it was the right thing to do, and we'll see what happens. And yeah, I mean, and that is literally what happened. But like I said, it took me a whole year to gather up the courage to say to my team and to my boss, and to say, okay, I want to do this, and gather up and I read, and I researched, and I listened to interviews of other women who worked, and there's nothing, I mean, there's nothing you can completely prepare, but in front of me, this idea that it was the right,
thing to do.
like, it's a good idea,
Yeah.
like, that sense that this is a good idea, was consistently there. And so I just and I yeah and I
I
went with
think
that.
at this point you should write about working from home and the hacks of that, because all of us have those situations at hand and you are 5 years ahead of the curve for sure. So after looking at it, after 5 years, what do you think? Like, what is the experience now when you look back?
So that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning. When you're out of the sort of professional framework that a city gives you, you have to, in some ways, you have to be open to all sorts of possibilities.
Sure.
You could say that it's not going to be the precise thing that you thought you were going to do, but at the same time you have to be able to say, well, what am I going to lose? I'm gonna try it out and see if it works. So for me, the last 5 years has consistently, every single year, it has been an exploration in the possibilities of saying yes to things.
So what all projects have
So,
you done? What all has it been?
so the first thing that, so I moved in 2015, and well, the first thing that came through, the only major event taking place in Kerala, at an international scale, a major event, was the Kochi Biennale, and the founders of the Kochi Biennale were both people that I knew at the time, and and art has I covered art as a journalist, covered and managed a gallery for a while. So art had always been something that I was on a management side, very much interested in. So the first thing that I had done when I moved, in addition to sort of being editor at large and writing, was to go and meet them and see, is there something that I can do and I can help. And I'd done a lot of, not fundraising, but a lot of revenue generating models that we had ideated for my brand when I was in Bombay. So that was something that, the commercial side was also something that I was very interested in. So the first thing I did was really go and see them and see, is there something possible? The office is 2.5 hours away from where I live, but I in my head, I thought, okay, you know what, I'll be here and then I can work. And it's entirely possible. So they were quite keen. And so the first project I took on was to become the communications head for
Nice.
the Kochi Biennale. But the Kochi Biennale is fairly very kind of, it has the ethos of a college festival. So you can do how much ever you wish to do, or very little if you don't wish to do anything. So, but for me, because I had relationships in Bombay, I was able to sort of structure sponsorship deals and things like that. So very quickly after that, they offered me the position of the CEO of the foundation. Largely, I think, because of fundraising capacity rather than anything, And I love working with people, and being able to work with them in a way that you care not just about the event, but you also care about the people who actually organize it. So that was the first major. So first is sort of in that communications role, and then as a head of management role, that was sort of the first big thing that kind of happened, and that was a good 3 years of the last 5 years, and and I left in middle of 2018, and spent again this sort of time of, oh, what do I do, where should I go, what should I be, the possibilities are endless, but and while I was sort of, I've always believed that Kerala's got a great deal of interesting stories to tell,
Sure.
that contemporary Kerala is not about houseboats and palm trees and coconuts. That there's a lot of design and art
Yes.
and literature, and really a very, very intelligent, very smart population of people, especially individuals who have returned from somewhere, people who've set up small businesses as design houses, fashion. And I always felt that those stories were really important to tell, that beyond just the tourism segment. So a friend of mine and I set up something called the Carolyn.com, which was a media, it was intended to be a media entity. We ended up shooting a bunch of stories, but just as we were sort of in the process of producing it, I had a call from Asian Paints through a friend of mine who worked there and who I dealt with for many years at that point. And they had a website, a design website called beautifulhomes.com, which he thought that I could edit, even though I was located in Kerala. And one of the things that I always felt was lacking when I was, say, in the luxury lifestyle segment, was that your readership is tiny, right? And you're essentially talking to people who already know to some extent, and who are not necessarily interested in as much about, who are interested in hiring the right people more often than not. So what was interesting about beautifulhomes.com was that the readership was vast, and it was a readership that was very interested in design from a practical standpoint. How do I do my own space, or how do I learn
So it's a
about
completely
something?
different approach altogether.
Yes, a completely different approach. It was advice, it was education, it was learning, it was, DIY. So for me, that was something that I was very, very interested in, because it was much wider, and because even with the Biennale, that was part of what I loved about it. It wasn't about just a few collectors buying a few pieces of art. It was about the public at large learning about how, and all of us learning about how art and design is a part of everyday life. It's the choices we make. So I thought that was a very interesting, that was a very interesting thing, and to be able to sit here and continue to do it. So early last year, I took that on, and when I took that on, the media, I mean, what I wanted to do with sort of telling stories in Kerala, that obviously took
Oh,
a backseat. Um, and so for the last year and a few months now, it's been beautifulhomes.com, and I've also set up a serviced villa, which is a cottage that I run on our property here, with an independent cottage, which is called anugrahakerala.com. It's a website that we've got with the details on it. Yeah, so those have been the two sort of major things in the last 1 year. And at the moment, like I said, I've just we're just about going to get started on a book,
wow.
which is also which is really also focused on Kerala.
Congratulations.
Um, Thank you. So, so yeah. So every year, has been a sort of a different trajectory. The opportunities that have come up from, the left and the right and the top and the bottom, and not in the ways that I thought.
And you never
Uh,
thought so many opportunities will come your way when you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I don't think at all. I think that technology has really, really changed that, the ability to stay connected, and to be able to feel like you're still part of the larger conversation. Because the fact of the matter is, and I realized this only once I moved out of Bombay, the media, because our English language media is largely based in Bombay, or at best in Delhi.
Right.
Most of the stories we end up telling, most of the things that we cover, end up being in Delhi and Bombay. Right? I mean, you could be a small cupcake maker in Bombay, but I would have read about you sitting
Sure.
here.
Sure.
But I could do the same thing here. You'll never read about that person over
That's
there,
true. That's true.
even though I can't buy your cupcakes. You know what I
Sure, sure.
mean? Even though these are hyper local, you will still, things that happen in Delhi and Bombay sort of get this impression of national significance,
Sure.
largely because of the kind of coverage that they get from the media. So I never thought that moving here would end up being in any form. I thought it was definitely a pause, and I thought that I would have to figure out what 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 one would do. Um, in fact, I remember a lot of my friends would say to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm calling you in the afternoon. I know it's in the middle of lunchtime and post lunchtime." And I remember saying, I don't go to sleep just because I got moved to Kerala. I don't fall asleep every day after lunch. So there were a lot of those kinds of ideas about what it meant
So I'm
to be
curious to
here.
know about what were the challenges of this decision. Like, what did you face any stigma? Did you realize that there are, people who are still not accepting you in the position that you are, or somebody who does not belong to the space that you are now in?
No, I mean, I would say that in terms of my work, there's been absolutely, when I took on the editorial role at beautifulhomes.com last year, I definitely felt extremely grateful that, wow, I'm sitting all the way here. So I would keep coming to Bombay at least twice a month. But of course, the world has now changed,
Sure.
right? So it's completely different. But I would have to say that in terms of the opportunities I've had, being away from Bombay has definitely actually given me a tremendous impetus in my career rather than the opposite. Rather, the challenges are of living in Kerala itself,
Okay.
because Kerala is a very conservative place. It is a place where you have this real contradiction between the way women are educated, but at the same time, what is perceived as their place
Okay.
in
What do you mean?
society. Well, like I said, I mean, Kerala has one of the highest rates of educated unemployment among women in the country.
Okay.
And my friends and I sometimes joke we have some of the most well-educated, tuition teachers, which are really mothers, because women are highly, highly, highly educated, but very often they are forced to stop working
Okay.
after they have kids, either because the opportunities are not there or because household activities naturally fall into your lap and
Right.
it is difficult to manage, right? And very often the expectation is that the woman will manage, and so you find very few women in high positions of power, where especially if it's not a family-owned organization.
Okay.
So when I worked at the Biennale, that was a big challenge for me because inevitably I would get a question if I was in a meeting, and sometimes in the middle of a meeting, somebody would say, "So where are you from? Who's your husband? What does he do? So those kinds of getting adjusting to life in a smaller place, whether it's in terms of just getting all sorts of people to listen to you, to get to be. I'm not a very. I mean, I'm not someone who's very loud. I'm
Mm.
not. I'm not very. Forceful.
Yeah.
I tend to be somebody who believes in communicating something and getting people to work with you. But I'm not. So for me, getting everyone together and to work in the spirit of a team, especially with such a large team. Initially, that was a big challenge. And in general, in Kerala, there tends to be some people will always be on the lookout for a man who can give them give them a piece of direction as opposed to a woman. So those were challenging, and it is, like I said, it's a very conservative place, and you can either there are only two ways you can take it. You can either sort of conform to it, or you can not conform to it. But how you do that, you can either be angry about it or you can have a sense of humor about it. I choose to have a sense of humor about it because I find it all a little bit funny sometimes. um, but that for me, the biggest challenge really was of living here,
Sure.
and being able to, in Bombay, when you live in a city, you have a certain sense of anonymity. People don't care, and especially a place like Bombay, no one cares whether your hair is short, your hair is long, whether you have a tattoo, you don't have a tattoo. Whereas I know that when I go out into, and I live in a village, it could be like, "Oh, what's that? Where are you from? What are you doing? Where are you going?" And
And these questions are
I'm
so uncomfortable for somebody who has
yes,
never heard them. Yeah.
exactly. So for me, those are very uncomfortable questions, and so initially, of being able to kind of, and I'm not somebody who likes to attract attention in that sense, but I am also comfortable in. I like me to be a particular way, but
Sure.
it's not in order to attract any attention. So it makes me really uncomfortable. So I found that very uncomfortable. I remember when I first moved here, and it was just me and my kids. And if something went wrong in the house, we have one or two guys here, and they would call my husband sitting in Bombay to tell him that something had gone wrong, and they wouldn't tell me. And I'd be the last, and I'd be like, "Why didn't you just come
Yeah,
in?"
yeah.
But we told sir, so like, okay, all right, fine.
Which is
So those
very,
are
very
those.
interesting to know because, we, in my mind, even after having traveled to Kochi for the exhibition and otherwise, I felt Kerala is one place which is a little more progressive towards women compared to other states. But this is very interesting to hear it from your perspective.
Well, it is progressive. Like I said, it's progressive in terms of education. It is progressive in terms of, women. You will find female doctors. You will find female engineers. In professions, you will find them. Um, but in terms of society's understanding of what roles are, you have
Especially
to
at
you. It
authoritative
takes
position.
time for them to get used to it.
Mhm.
But 5 years on, I mean, I think it's 5 years on. I'm very comfortable. But I think initially for me, that was really the bigger challenge.
So, on the note of challenge, I want to move to our next segment where I will look at your handwriting. And over to you. What questions would you like me to answer based on your writing?
Well, I'm like I was, earlier saying. I think I'm always intrigued by change, and I've been told very often that that I'm always sort of I'm very flexible, and I don't know whether it has been said in the nice way or the bad way, but I wonder what my handwriting says about me in that sense about the image of or the way that I would like to see myself as somebody who sits and with one craft or one capability and then hones it bit by bit over 25, 30 years is not how my career has gone. And it has always been taking opportunities and working with it and making sure that you use it to develop yourself and your CV. So I wonder what my handwriting can tell me about that.
Sure, sure. I think that's
Um,
a great question. Let's look at this, okay? So, in your writing, your handwriting, when you start tilting it, it tilts a lot towards the right side of your page. Now, we call it in graphology, the term is used as a slant. So, it moves towards the right slant. Now, anybody, even for our listeners, anybody who writes with a slant tilting mode, so if it is 90-degree perpendicular to your ruled line, it's one way of writing straight. But from there, in your case, you move a lot towards the right side of the page. Now, what does that mean? The simplest thing about writing and connecting it to your choices, that brings in a lot of impulsive behavior, that brings in a lot of curiosity, constantly interacting. I would use the word flirting with the ideas. So if you're not flirting with ideas and if you're repetitively doing the same thing, like the Japanese noodle maker you were mentioning, it is very difficult for you to be intellectually engaged in that activity. So it has to surprise you if it is growing. If the same thing, mundane thing, if it is growing, it is surprising you. If you're learning from the same recipe, you're there. You will absolutely give your best to move deeper into it and find your own expression through it. But if it is not growing with you, it becomes a challenge. And let me take that note and add a little different kind of layer to this. Now, if you're exploring an area, a topic, a concept, now the exploration is about challenging a norm, challenging the basis on which this is built. And when you do that, for you, that experimenting is the most important area of your work. If you're doing something and if you're not adding value, for you, the idea of adding value is trying something different and taking the performance to the next level. Now, it comes with its own challenges because you have to question yourself all the time, and that's difficult. and you have gone through multiple journeys. This is like a drastic one that everybody could look at, that you moved from Bombay to Kerala, but this is not the first one. You literally picked up concepts and you gave your 100% to see whether that's the concept I want to live with, whether I really want to be this kind of a person. But you do not borrow ideas and make them yours without trying and testing them. So that also
Yeah,
comes from.
I've always had this idea that some people write stories about others, and some people are a story. And to me, the notion of not of staying within the same comfortable zone that you begin with, and you just stay there and don't kind of if you use that analogy of like a rubber band,
Yeah.
sort of stretch yourself to as far as you can go. For me personally, that's something that I would I would like. But it's that contradiction, right? That idea of one staying somewhere and just doing the same thing over and over again, but really well, or but at the same time of moving away. So it's a constant kind of trying to figure out which one, or is it okay? Is it okay to be both?
So when I feel, yes, you are exploring, yes, you're trying new things, but I do see your favorite thing that we are talking about, consistency at the base of it. You're consistently questioning the norms. You're consistently trying things differently. Now there is this different form of consistency. It might not look like the monotonous robotic way of doing the same thing over and over again, which we understand as our ideas, right? We feel people who are consistent, they show up, they do the same thing over and over again. But it takes creative consistency to be in the process, to go through the churn over and over again. Because what I'm trying to say is, it is tough to constantly put yourself through those, different explorations and question things, because we love to settle down. And one of the things that you can
Yeah.
identify with is you don't like to settle down. The very moment you feel that you are feeling settled, you're like, okay, oh my God, how can that happen? You start feeling that my life is going through some crisis. And then you start, like in a way
Oh
breaking
gosh.
away from whatever you think is stopping you. In your writing, there's one particular stroke which speaks about flow of thoughts. It's a connected stroke, and it really allows you to express whatever you have to say, verbally or in writing, in a really artistic way. And you're not doing it now, it always happened even from childhood. You wanted, every time you tried articulating your thoughts, they took their own shape, and you pretty much took notes and you told those things to people. And it's a very seamless flow in the way you connect unrelated things. And I think that has always helped you in every career that you just described, every choice that you made.
But I wonder then how that compares to this notion of, sort of imposter syndrome. Because one of the things that does happen, I suppose, when you get opportunities to do things and you are, in some form or some aspect of that is something that you haven't done before, and you're plunged right into the heart of it and you're doing it. One of the things that comes up is, should I really be in the middle of this? And do I belong here? Am I able to do it? And I wonder how you think about how these two things, or how you deal with that, while at the same time executing the task that you have been given, even if it doesn't resemble the five other tasks you did before.
So, because you're constantly chasing the challenging points in your career and in your life, so what you do is you literally take these newer challenges and let's look at your work and your life. And I'm doing that with an idea that this would allow you or help you look at your future decisions. So, when you look at how you stopped yourself in the middle of really flourishing project or flourishing career growth, and you said, wait a minute, what am I contributing here? What can I really do that other people cannot do? Or how can I make this game even more meaningful? Not challenging, but meaningful. Now, for somebody to do that, you really have to know what all you have to gather. You have to know that your willingness, it can't be your capacity, because you get into situations you have no clue about in many cases. So you walk in and say, okay, I'm going to figure things out. So then you start collecting information and people to deliver upon what you have in mind. So I feel the pattern is similar, no matter whether it's parenting, whether it is about the career choices, or it's about the way even you are figuring out your space while working with people around you. All of this follows the same, pattern underneath. Now, what you're referring to is what I see in your writing, and I'm going to say this as is the imposter syndrome. In so many places where you feel that you are ready to take that jump, you want to do things, a part of you, and I think it comes from uh, somebody or some authority questioning you for being a woman, for being who you are, for wherever the questioning comes. And I've seen this with many, many successful people. Even Michelle Obama said that my imposter syndrome shows up one fine day, and it keeps coming back. Even if I work at it, it keeps coming back. So I would really request you to look at it for what it is. Because if the doubtful thoughts are coming to you only as a matter of habit or only because they were implanted by the society that we belong to or people around us, knowingly or unknowingly, those norms stay. So you may say to the other people or men that, of course, I'm in the position of authority and that is easier to deal with. But if that same thought comes from within and you say, should I be in the position of authority? Should I be even doing this? Now, that could happen at any level. It is expressed as guilt, it is expressed as self doubt, it is expressed as not allowing yourself to do what you believe in. Now, at whatever degree that you find that, I think it is worth giving a thought for sure.
Well, I often find that when it does come up, or when you have that level of self doubt, the thing that has um, sometimes helped is to go in doing the homework
Mm.
and doing the research and having all your data points with you, and being able to do that background work so that you're well armed, as it were, to defeat doubts. But it entirely obviously depends on when that's it. And even when it comes to parenting, that is
Yeah.
something that
Wow.
parents are always, if you really think about it, you're always doubting whether the things that you do are right, and whether it works. I mean, you're constantly racked by that sense of doubt
Sure. Sure.
about capacity and the decisions that you make. So I suppose you have to defeat it with whatever is suitable to that particular moment.
And also along with that, the another aspect that I feel that you use most of the time is your tremendous grit to go through the process. You would not leave the situation unless until you feel you're not done. So even if it is uncomfortable, even if it is not giving you the kind of recognition or validation of your own idea, if you think you still have energy left to give your best shot, you will go ahead and do it. I think that has been an important aspect of your career growth for sure. That you have not left any stone unturned according to you. Other people may think anything, but you haven't done that for sure in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I often say to my kids as well, that you might not be able to always get it right, but you need to know that you've tried hard, and you've not given up,
Yep.
and not tried, because it's to me, even if the end result doesn't really work, to know that I've stuck with it and put my head down and I've coped and gave it my all is something that's enormously important to me. And it's, I think, hard work also can go a long way, even if you're not superbly lucky or superbly, not all of us are born geniuses, but hard work can take us a lot further than geniusness even. So that is something that I think is, yeah, putting your nose to the stone and just keeping at it and getting it done as best you can is really important.
Actually, the next question, which is the last part of our conversation, was about your failures, and I think you already answered a part of it. But which was your favorite failure, and what did you do to deal with it? So hard work is one thing that we have already spoken about.
Well, I think when I mean, what you define as sort of failure can often also just be so different in different cases, right? When I think about the move to Kerala, sometimes I think, what is, should I have stayed? Is it failure at that point to say no, I'm going to choose this over the other? Is so it depends really on the way you perceive it and the way we think about it. So that was one thing that I realized, also, because when you are in that doubt of, am I right, making the right choice? Am I giving up? Is this giving up, or is it trying something new? I mean, it's the same decision, but it's
Of course,
just a
of
completely
course,
different way of
yeah.
thinking about it. That was something that I realized also, that okay, you can put a positive spin on it and you can think about it like this, but somebody else can see it in a completely different form. In terms of that same contradiction is there pretty much for many many things in my mind. In some form, I've always also thought, oh, is entrepreneurship something that I would like to try? But then I think, oh well, I don't think I'm a very good entrepreneur because I've always loved the structure of places, and to fit into the structure. So I mean, when I think about my career, I don't know if it's a precise failure as such, but I think you could look at different points of it, whether it is also leaving my position at the Kochi Biennale Foundation, which was an extremely difficult decision, but it came at a point where I felt that I had done everything I could to sort out an extremely difficult organization that had become very used to behaving in a certain manner. Um, and I decided that at that time that, no, I've done the best I can do here, and if I continue to keep trying and kind of pushing my head against the wall, what am I going to achieve, and what is that again taking away from my life? And you can see again, that is that again giving up, or is it making a decision for yourself? But one thing that I've, when I consider that and when I look back, I always think that, well, you one give it everything that you could have given it?
That's beautiful.
Did you try everything that you could try? Did you leave it in a better position than you found it?
That's
And that I can say 100% yes, right?
So it is
So
your own understanding about your best shot at the situation.
yeah,
That's all.
and also really about leaving it. Never leave anything. For me, when I think, never leave something when it's at its worst. Leave it in a better way. And I remember when, because of the challenges of that job, and and raising funds and all of that, and there were many times in that process where things were so difficult that I could have said, no, I don't want to do it. It's this is like really bad, and I'm going to do it. But I wanted to get it to a place where there was money in the bank, where there was, things were paid for, things were done. So I could say I'm leaving, but I'm leaving now when
Things are better.
I have settled matters. I have settled the matters that I was responsible for.
Sure.
And things are better than when I found it. And then you go. So don't,
See, that is
don't, don't don't flee when the house is on fire, is the way that I kind of think about it. So failure, it can always be looked at in different ways, but like I said, I've learned something from every situation. And in all fairness, when I think about some of those situations, when you're in the middle of the situation, it just really is very difficult.
yes, yes.
um, but I'm extremely extremely glad that those things happened. And like I said, it's that, I when I think about it, it's okay, did you give it your best shot? And if
Totally.
the answer is yes.
My last question to you is: do you have any mantra, any quote, any slogan that you remind yourself of when you're dealing with your tough phases?
Yeah, so on my arm is a, you can't see it on this, but this is a, it's a saying in, I love the Hebrew script, so it's in Hebrew. I hope it's been written in the right way. I don't know because I don't read Hebrew, but it's a saying, this too shall pass. And
We need
many
this
people
at
say,
this
oh,
point in time so much.
yeah, well, but the thing is, I like to always point out that I don't mean for it in times of bad, but I also mean for it in times of good. Because one of the ways you are able to capture the moment, is to remember that. One of the ways to enjoy this conversation for me is to remember that, right? The moments with my kids, to be able to say, well, a 4-year old's joke is a great joke because you have experienced that one on one, and to not look back and reminisce over something that I wasn't able to experience. So it's not just the bad times, but also the good times. To know that it will pass, and so you capture it, and sit in the middle of it and really allow yourself to enjoy it, um, because it will go, and people will come and people will go and things will happen. But for me, this is something that I've, given the experiences of my life, this is something that I've believed in a lot. When you have love, you lose love. When you go through bad experiences and you get through it, and I think of myself as someone who has really, like a little cockroach, just sort of put something up and just gone through and kept at it.
But let me
Um,
tell you, cockroach is one of the most resilient insects ever,
Exactly,
ever. Yeah.
exactly. Resilience, stay. You're small, but you're resilient, and you're
Good.
fast. And so that's how I think of myself. And and so that ability to say, okay, don't get caught up in the pain. It will go. You will get through it. I'm also a big Vipassana follower, and and that is the thing that you learn in Vipassana, that whatever you feel, don't capture it and just hold on to it, because it's very temporary, and it will leave you momentarily. So you just have to wait for the moment to pass.
That's such a beautiful way to, go about life, everything that you do. And I believe that also allows you to be completely present in the moment of everything that you're doing. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being on this show. This
Thank you
was a
so much.
wonderful conversation. And I can't wait to read your book. All the best on your journey as an author.
Thank you so much, Aditi. It was so enlightening, and it's such an interesting conversation. And anything that helps one think about oneself in the context of something large is always interesting. So thank you for doing this
Thank you.
and spending time considering other people. I think that's a really lovely, lovely, lovely task.
I think for
So
me that's
thank you.
that's life. So I'm so glad I get to do this. I'm so excited. I'm so I'm looking forward to the journey of just exploring other people for our
Yeah,
listeners, because you don't get to do that otherwise. So that's like an insider view.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could relate to the conversation about imposter syndrome, then make sure that you listen to the Absolutely Right episode number 60, where I spoke about 5 ways to deal with it. Writer Jodi Picoult said, "The human capacity for burden is like bamboo, far more flexible than you would ever believe at first glance." So, resilience is the key. Resilience is one's ability to bounce back from life's disappointments, failures, pain, as well as the ability to deal with new situations, challenges, in short, the new normal. We do not have much control over what life throws at us, but we can choose how to deal with our situations in a different way. On our Friday episode, let's talk about what can you do to be more resilient on your path. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Absolutely Right. Please review, comment, and share this podcast with anybody who can get benefited by these conversations. Also, send me your questions on my Instagram handle at Aditi Surana. For this entire month of October, we are doing a special awareness drive around calmness called Kama Sutra with Aditi Surana. Every day for 12 minutes, I do a handwriting based meditation process on Instagram Live. All the details are mentioned on aditisurana.com/Kamasutra. CALM. If you like this podcast, then don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Let's connect on Friday. Till then, happy writing!